Presence is considered viable on Cursed Hollow and Battlefield of Eternity, and otherwise is not something you pick up. Just because with the Globe Change, Power Hungry basically always gives you more mana sustain than Astral Presence does, and gives you additional damage. But on Cursed and Battlefield, you're fighting away from lanes long enough that the Globe doesn't guarantee the sustain. In some cases on Cursed, in particular, you want to make sure you guarantee that soak. Aetherwalker is actually pretty underestimated. It's popular. This is the critical talent for the Chinese race build, the BOE build where they take Aetherwalker and Calamity and they just spam constantly on the Immortal to race. It gives Li-Ming a lot of race potential. Force Armor, as we saw picked up in that game, does a lot to deny damage on Li-Ming and allow her to be survivable, especially if she takes Calamity at level 7 because she has to blink in aggressively. Charge Blast adds a lot of damage. Triumvirate is a poke talent because it resets on long-range hits if you're constantly poking. You can be very aggressive with it. Dominance restores your health. All of those are considered very viable and situational. Seeker does a lot of damage if you can consistently hit all 3 procs and you're playing a little bit safer. You're playing back and you don't need Wave Clear. Calamity offers you both Wave Clear and more value from resets because it gives you a 3rd damaging ability. Zea's Vengeance, we don't see this very often, but very occasionally, we do see full orb build. So that's 4, 7, and 16. And it's kind of like a siege mortar, right? It's not available all the time, but if you keep throwing them out, eventually something's just going to die because of the shrapnel, because of the splash damage. We usually only see it on Dragonshire in terms of like high level play, but the orb build is decent. If every other Li-Ming build's at 100%, the orb build's maybe at like 90%. And in certain situations it can be edged out. Wave of Force is better at self-peel, securing kills, and interrupting stationary channels. Disintegrate is a better zoning and wave clear heroic, and it's technically more damage if you can channel it for the full duration, even though it is a self-root. So there's some pros and cons right there. Cannoneer is an interesting talent. The way I think of 13 talents is this. Glass Cannon is the most damage but the least safety. Illusionist is the most safety but offers no additional damage. And Cannoneer offers some additional damage with no downside in terms of hindering your survivability. It's a pretty simple scenario. Cannoneer also has some synergy with Aetherwalker, because it allows you to use your abilities more often, and you can pre-stack it by just spamming free Aetherwalkers. With the mount speed change, actually, Aetherwalker is going to be a little bit of an advantage there, because you can teleport around faster than you'll be able to mount in some cases. And then you'll have pre-stacked Cannoneer for that opening fight burst. Fireflies, again, synergizes with Cannoneer. Otherwise, you go Mirror Ball, unless you're going for the full orb build, or you need survivability from Diamond Skin. And then Temporal Flux and Repulsion are both ridiculous upgrade. Telrash's gives you a little bit of free damage. It's inconsistent to some degree because of the way your abilities rotate, but once you start getting resets and you can just reset, it ends up being really, really strong. And Archon, as mentioned, is a significant zoning tool against stealth heroes or just for siege damage against buildings. If your team can zone for you in the late game, you can actually just stand out of range and burn buildings down. And if they can't get to you because they're lacking dive, you will eventually just get all the keeps as a result. It's actually what we saw in the game I'm thinking of on Sky Temple. Li-Ming just ended up finishing off very low health keeps safely using Archon. Just they rotated around, they ended up getting all the keeps, and it put a lot of pressure on the team, and they ended up strangling out the game. So Li-Ming is one of the few heroes where I think every single talent is actually viable and has some situation where it is the correct choice.